All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome. Tonight we're going to discuss the effects of the Iran war and what it means for the balance of power in the Middle East. I think you've all known that since February 28th, the region has been shocked because Iran has been struck. Supreme leader has been killed, nuclear infrastructure has been degraded, but the regime is still standing, and the Strait of Hormuz is barely open. Or limited open. And the war is not over, even though there's a ceasefire. It seems like the consequences are only beginning to be felt in the rest of the world also. But behind all these consequences and geopolitics, there's also a human toll. The Gaza genocide continues. Lebanon and Syria have been bombed, and 1 million of people fled in Lebanon. And the Gulf has been struck by missiles. Across the region, ordinary life has been disrupted in ways that will take years to recover from, and there's also obviously an energy crisis, and the toll on human life will probably grow. Yeah. But the main question we are going to talk about here tonight is looking across Iran, Israel, and the Gulf states, and what kind of regional order is emerging now. And this is the first one of a few round tables, I think. My name is Nadia Moussaid, and I'm a journalist and presenter for public television and radio. At the moment, I present the radio program Bureau Buitenland, a foreign desk. And last year, I've made 3 documentaries on Israel and Palestine. And yeah, thank you all for being here. I've never done an evening with people sitting behind me, so I hope you're fine with looking at my back. But I'm going to introduce the 4 guests. First of all, Taghreed El-Khodary. She's a former New York Times journalist who reported on Gaza, from Gaza, and continued working as a fellow at Carnegie Endowment and as a researcher and analyst for the International Crisis Group. And you're now based in Amsterdam, where you work as an independent analyst and commentator. Then we have a Dr. I practiced this name, I'm sorry. Mate Salai, a research fellow at the Conflict Research Unit of Klingendael and a member of the Middle East Group, and you specialize in international relations and the domestic political economic systems of the broader Gulf region. And we have another journalist, Dirk Walters. He's a senior editor at NRC, where you cover the Middle East. And before that, you were a correspondent in Israel and Palestine, and in 2018, you wrote the book Israel Does Not Apologize Anymore. In 2024, your second book was published, Israel-Palestine. And last but not least, Dr. Gert-Jan Hoetjes, a lecturer at European Studies at the University of Amsterdam with a background in Middle East politics and political science. And you specialize in the impact of internet technology and the continuous politics in Kuwait and Oman. Well, welcome, everyone. That was the introduction, everyone. But we're going to start with a small video, because the peace talks seem to be failing. And last night, President Trump stated that the ceasefire between the US and Iran is on major life support. Mm-hmm.
For the time being, the ceasefire remains in place. It's unbelievably weak, I would say. I would call it the weakest right now. After reading that piece of garbage they sent us, I didn't even finish reading it. They said I'm going to waste my time reading it. I would say it's one of the weakest right now. It's on life support. They understand these are all medical people. Dr. Oz, life support is not a good thing. Do you agree? Diagnostic. I would say the ceasefire is on massive life support.
Serious.
Yeah, massive life support. That's the situation of the peace talks. Could you give us an update on what you know, Derek, what the current situation is?
Yeah, well, of course, Trump has tried bombing Iran for weeks, and then he got into a ceasefire, and a ceasefire needs to be followed by serious negotiations because ceasefire is temporary. But then, well, as you can hear, he doesn't take Iran's proposals seriously. So now he will maybe resort to bombing again. He and his friend Netanyahu have both suggested that they will get the enriched uranium out of Iran. But how they will do that, that's the big question, because how can you do such a thing securely?
So that's what we know, basically.
That's what we know now.
And then there was also other news today. Latest news from the Wall Street Journal is that the Emirates secretly attacked oil refineries on Iran. Gert-Jan,
Yeah.
this is big news today. What does that tell you?
Yeah, it tells me that the story was always that the war was being led by U.S. and Israel. There are like U.S. troops, like in different Gulf states, who are also involved in the planning, so that's not new. But that actually one of the Gulf states, the United Arab Emirates, is willing to retaliate against the attacks of Iran against its infrastructure is really telling. And it's also, I guess, a warning sign from the United Arab Emirates against Iran, that they can also hit back. And that might, the message behind it would be to kind of like try to restrain Iran with attacking the UAE, which actually has felt the brunt of the attacks on the Gulf states so far.
Okay, let's, Matej, you have the task of describing how the power dynamics are in the region. So we have US, Israel attacking Iran, but what is the picture?
Oh, that's a great question to be answered in 2 minutes. I think what we can see in the current geopolitical situation, at least since 2023, is that the balance of power has been shifting considerably, and we can see, and again, this is not a normative description, this is completely a balance of power realist prescription of the situation. So the power and influence of Israel is increasing, and it's also its military control of territory in Palestine, in Syria, in Lebanon has been increasing and has been conducting military strikes in various Arab countries. So far, we can see that before this situation there was an alliance of Iran and these quote-unquote axis of resistance, which included mostly non-state actors, but some state actors, for example, Syria until 2024.
Okay, wait, stop.
Yeah.
So, the
axis of resistance.
It's also sometimes called the axe of evil, right?
Well,
yeah, but some Dutch politicians call it the axe of evil. Yeah. So let's continue with that one. So you have this, just not too fast. I want everybody to follow what you explain.
So basically, in the past 2 decades or even more, Iran has built up this network of alliance, which does not include proxies in the sense that these are not controlled by Iran. All of these organizations and partners have been created, have been developing in their own context. So, for example, the Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthi movement in Yemen, or Hamas in Palestine, they have been called as part of the axis of resistance, but they were not created by Iran per se and have been developing by their own. They are receiving support, or they have received support from Iran, and their interests to some extent align, but that doesn't mean a complete alignment or a lack of agency, if you will, in this in this situation. But since
so these are the Iranian proxies, basically what you described now.
Iranian partners, I would call them. And since 2023, we can see a weakening of this alliance or this network considerably, which tilted the balance of power towards Israel. And from this perspective, it was not a surprise maybe that the U.S. decided to attack Iran last year first and this year again, because
why?
Because when the balance of power shifts considerably, then the chances of escalation increase as well. Because if you don't
this is like a natural order.
I wouldn't call it natural order, but it's like a traditional political order. You don't want to attack your enemy when you are on the same setting. You want to attack your enemy when you perceive it to be weak, and that is what happened with Iran. There were mass protests due to the chronic economic social problems inside Iran, and the leadership of Israel and the United States considered this as an ideal point to topple the regime.
Yeah.
Now we know that this was not a winning strategy, but more on that later.
Yeah, and can you elaborate on that, Taghreed? Because before the latest war, Israel has already taken on a very specific posture in the broader region, right? They attacked Doha, in an attempt to kill the Hamas leadership. Lebanon, and last June, Iran. So there's been several steps being made by Israel. Matej already explained it a little bit, but can you explain what is the strategy of Israel? What are they after?
They are not hiding it. They are saying it very clearly in the Israeli media, and also they dare also to share it at the United Nations. Remember when Netanyahu gave his speech at the United Nations, in which he said, "This is the new map of the Middle East, where Palestine doesn't exist," and then it reveals that they are aiming for control over the region. And that's what Israel intends to do. And this is clear from its policies. And the issue is become very clear that it's not about a nuclear. It's about the hegemony of all over nowadays the Gulf. This is what they want. And you mentioned how Emirates is driven in. So there is a division within the Gulf states now, because Saudi Arabia now is in conflict with the Emirates over this, and this is becoming very, very crucial.
Yeah.
So, and there are, voices now among, the Gulf countries. It's like, and it was very obvious, the rift before the war. It was very clear, the rift between Saudi Arabia and Emirates over its policies in the region, because it seems that Emirates is becoming like a kind of an working with Israel in the region.
Yeah.
And that's to consider. It's very clear, I just want to mention that it's not new that Israel is undermining any negotiations.
Do you mean the negotiations
When
with
it
Iran?
comes to the nuclear, in this case, if you want to focus on, remember, during
I see a lot of nodding here at the table. You all agree?
During the Obama administration, what did he do in 2015? He went to the Congress and he lobbied against the agreement that Obama was keen to reach between, Iran and European countries, and also the U.S. and Russia, to bring them all. And that Obama was very successful till, and then you have Netanyahu lobbying in the Congress against it. And then when Trump in 2018, won, what did he do? He convinced Trump to withdraw from that agreement.
The nuclear deal.
From the nuclear deal. And in a way, so Israel's intention, nothing through negotiation.
What they are after?
War is becoming the policy. And it's the normalization of war. And why? Because...
Do you all agree with it?
Yeah, I would say if Israel sees a problem, it takes the hammer to deal with the problem.
So no diplomacy?
No
Diplomacy, no negotiations.
Yeah, and Gert-Jan, can you explain a bit what are the power dynamics in the Gulf? Saudi Arabia, the UAE. Can you describe that for us?
Yeah. Historically, Saudi Arabia has always been the most important power in the Gulf, and also portraying itself as a leader of the Arab world, particularly after 1979. And also, the different Gulf states were in its fold. But you see a fracturing within that Gulf alliance, particularly between the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. And one immediately signed was the Abraham Accords that were signed by Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates with Israel in 2020.
What were the Abraham Accords?
So Abraham Accords was normalization between the UAE, Bahrain, and Israel. So that meant that they both that they recognized Israel, that Israel could send their ambassador to Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates, and also of course vice versa. And it also meant economic relations, official economic relations between Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, and Israel. And Saudi Arabia was not part of that, the Abraham Accords. So that was already undermining.
There was a sign that there was not an alliance, basically.
Yeah, there was not an alliance. And that has further fractured with Israel and the United Arab Emirates, further enhancing their cooperation. Also, actually, currently, The Iron Dome, of parts of the Iron Dome have been installed in the United Arab Emirates during this war. So Israel has also become more important in terms of like defense of the United Arab Emirates. And yeah, also in terms of like Gaza, there's like some tacit cooperation between like United Arab Emirates and Israel. Also in terms of like the reconstruction plans in which the United Arab Emirates will be involved. And also,
so in light of this, what we heard today, the news we mentioned before, the Wall Street Journal published. Yeah. This is quite telling that they actually attacked Iran, right?
Yeah, it's quite telling that they are willing to side completely actually in this war with Israel and the United States, while the other Gulf states have tried to take a bit of more neutral position, and also that has been like a displeasure of the United Arab Emirates because they wanted the other Gulf states to adopt a more hostile tone against Iran. But they failed to do so in the eyes of the United Arab Emirates. And that this is also a sign against the other Gulf states that they are willing to go all along with Israel. And
why are they doing this? What is their interest?
The interest, I mean, the one important element is that the United Arab Emirates has been also the state within the Gulf region that has been mostly been targeted by Iran. So Iran has obviously like targeted Israel, it has targeted US based in the region, but it also has deliberately targeted United Arab Emirates, also because of the Abraham Accords, because of their tight relationship with Israel, and basically want to punish it for that. At the same time, it also has been a deliberate strategy by Iran to further drift Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates apart. Yeah. Because they are at loggerheads with each other in Yemen, in Sudan, also in the Horn of Africa.
Yeah, the UAE and Saudi Arabia.
So the UAE and Saudi Arabia. So that's
is everybody following this? I think we need a map. Oh, there's a map behind us. Okay, I missed my colleagues who have a map on the table. It's nice to draw, right? Yeah. We actually have a piece of video from last December where the tensions between Saudi Arabia and the UAE escalated into a military confrontation in Yemen.
Yeah.
Yeah, Matej, what is this confrontation really about?
There are many explanations for this.
What do you mean?
I mean, there are many layers of this.
Okay,
first of all, we have an economic layer, which is quite important. These countries have traditionally relied on oil and gas exports in their economy, but all of them have been diversifying their economies, so they are building up different sectors. The UAE has been very effective in this. If you think about Dubai, for example, which is the second largest emirate in the UAE, they are very efficient in financial services, high-end tourism, and so on and so forth.
High-end tourism.
And when it comes to the Saudis, they have been diversifying as well, but they started a bit later than the UAE in the last 10 years. So they are rushing to take away the primary position of the UAE in many sectors. Consider the case of AI, for example. Both countries want to position themselves as global leaders in this field. So that's one dimension. Another dimension is that the geopolitics of this, which Hertjan, I think, described very effectively and precisely. I would just add that from an Emiratis perspective, Saudi Arabia is the toxic big brother of the Gulf, in the sense that they have the convening power to get together the Arab League, the Gulf Cooperation Council, and all kind of organizations, exert their influence through these multilateral forums, and sell their own perspective as the consensus. And the UAE has been seeing this, others have been seeing this, and as the Emirati economy grew considerably in the last decades, they felt that they cannot take this anymore, and they want to have their independent policies. And just to add the third dimension,
So they're competing. Yeah.
exactly, for influence and so on.
Yeah.
And I would also add that there is a very strong personal layer. These political systems are heavily personalized. We have Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in Saudi Arabia, who has been dominating the country for the last decade. And we have Mohammed bin Zayed, who is the president of the UAE. And he used to be the mentor of Mohammed bin Salman, by the way. So he helped him connecting to people in the US and elsewhere. But the relationship, which was quite good in the 2010s, are described to getting more toxic, more problematic, and basically Mohammed bin Salman, so the Saudi crown prince, he wanted to be the natural leader of the Gulf and wanted to be the main chef in the kitchen, or any way you want to put it. Yeah.
And then one more time, their relations with the US and Israel and Iran. Like, can you divide it one more time?
So currently what we can see is the Emirates is deepening ties with Israel and the US.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia is a bit more difficult to describe at this point. I wouldn't describe these as exclusive alliances, because regardless of the tensions we just described, the Emirati-Saudi ties remain strong in economics, for example. The UAE still is the biggest investor in Saudi Arabia. So they have to cooperate to a great extent. I know that this is super confusing, but what is important to see in the Middle East is that there won't be exclusive military alliances such as NATO or other organizations as this. All of these countries manage to cooperate in one issue and compete
attack each other in another country. That's how it works, basically. And if you look at their security guarantees, the Gulf states made a bet on the US. Do you think that was a safe bet, the security umbrella of the US?
Well, it made sense.
Like looking at what happened.
Yeah, so this relationship goes back 2 decades, basically, but when it became very militarized and securitized, it was in the 1990s, after the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, after which the US led an alliance which managed to kick out the Iraqi army of Kuwait. And that was a wake-up call for the Gulf states that their security is not automatic, basically, and who to cooperate with, then the hegemon, or the number one global power at the era. So it made sense, and it still makes some sense today, since there is nobody to replace the US with. So you cannot replace the US bases with Russia, you cannot replace them with China. These countries still don't have the necessary military capabilities to defend themselves completely. Although what happened during this crisis and this war is that the belief in the deterrent factor of the US bases and the US cooperation collapsed. So instead of the US bases protecting them and deterring Iran from attacking them, it just made them a target.
Yeah, it made them a target. And were they protected?
He sold them, Trump sold them in a second. Yeah. So for Israel, that's it. And it's I think it's important to point that there is a debate among Gulf countries nowadays.
You don't agree?
No.
Well,
I do agree with you.
Yeah.
But I want to make another point, which also further adds to the regional balance. So this is not new. Like in 2019, 2020, there were attacks on oil installations in Saudi Arabia, in which probably Iran was involved. There were attacks on oil tankers in Fujairah in the United Arab Emirates, in which Iran was probably involved in some kind of manner. And what really disappointed the Gulf states is that there actually was no reaction from the United States to those incidents, to the security incidents.
But this is the worst.
Yeah.
The worst that can happen to the Gulf.
Yeah.
Why?
Sure.
Can you explain
because
why?
it's really like the image, as he explained, of Emirates. What's the strength of Emirates?
Safety.
Yeah.
Stability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's no longer a stable region. The Gulf it's not only oil, but it's energy, but it's also tourism. And you need the stability and investment, international investment. This is a huge for the Gulf, and this is their power. And all of a sudden, this has collapsed, by Trump, their ally. They're really imagine, I was listening to the former Qatari foreign minister, and he said there is a debate within the Gulf countries now. There is a camp they're very angry at Iran. And that is justified. Their anger is very justified. And they want to think after this how to attack Iran, how to really go ahead with the war. But there is a very strong, based on logic, camp, and it's very strong among the Gulf countries, that says, no, we were hit. This was imposed on us, and it was the American thing, so they sold us. Now, among the Gulf countries, they are thinking of a NATO-type alliance. That's similar to what's happening in Europe now. You have Europe, and now they are thinking of NATO, how to revive it, how to make it not dependent on the Americans, but now also the Gulf. Let's bring Pakistan, let's bring Turkey, and also us. But then you have one country or two among the Gulf country that will be like, I would like to go for, there's confrontation.
They don't agree yet. So
there's
Pakistan is coming in, Turkey is coming in.
This is the intention. This is what they aim for. And let's hope they will be a unified, alliance. And that will be their strength. If they don't have that, they are so weak. Because in a second, everything is gone. Back to the point of, I'm sorry, just...
You still have a response or a question?
There was one to make before you...
Go on.
And that related to those attacks that I related to in 2019.
Yeah.
So the reaction of the Gulf states back then was that they sought like a rapprochement with Iran and more friendly relations.
Yes.
Because Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, before that time, they had very hostile relations with Iran. But because of those attacks and because the United States didn't react, they felt slightly insecure. And because of that, they sought to kind of have a modus vivendi, to seek a modus vivendi with Iran.
Diplomatic option.
And that's because of this war that has completely collapsed. So that is very problematic.
But could you imagine that Iran will be accepted then in the future as a regional player?
It has to be, because it has a population of 93 million people. It's the big neighbor across the Persian Gulf. So
the US,
it has basically weaponized the Strait of Hormuz, which gives it also significant influence, especially on the Gulf states that are beyond the Strait of Hormuz. It completely collapses all the plans they have with the further development of Abu Dhabi, Doha, Dubai, Kuwait. Qatar can't export its LNG now. So therefore, they have to find a new balance with Iran again.
You agree, Matej?
I agree. I would just add that even if the US lost much goodwill in the Gulf because of its foreign policy, Iran lost some of its goodwill as well. The Iranian, although the Gulf states were not agreeing on the US-Israeli attack on Iran, they were also, of course, hurt when Iran attacked against them, right? So that was definitely a security shock. And we can see this especially in the case of Saudi Arabia or Qatar, which especially Saudi Arabia, they put significant political efforts in normalizing ties with Iran. They built personal connections, they lobbied for Iran in the United States, and so on and so forth. And this, after this, the Iranian attacks really undermined this goodwill. So even if I agree that, of course, geopolitics and the map won't change, so Iran is going to be there, it is going to take significant efforts by Iran to restore the ties which we were able to see before February.
Yeah.
I want to go to the next clip to introduce the next chapter. peace. It was in the program 60 Minutes when Netanyahu was asked about the war with Iran.
Is the war with Iran over? And if it isn't, who will decide when it is?
I think it accomplished a great deal, but it's not over because there's still nuclear material enriched uranium that has to be taken out of Iran. There's still enrichment sites that have to be dismantled. There's still proxies that Iran supports, their ballistic missiles that they still want to produce. Now, we've degraded a lot of it, but all of that is still there, and there's work to be done.
How do you envision the highly enriched uranium will be removed from Iran?
You go in and you take it out.
With what? Special forces from Israel, special forces from the United States?
Well, I'm not going to talk about military means, but what President Trump has said to me, I want to go in there. And I think it can be done physically. That's not the problem. If you have an agreement and you go in and you take it out, why not? That's the best way.
What if there isn't an agreement? Can it be taken out by force?
Well, you're going to ask me these questions. I'm going to dodge them because I'm not going to talk about our military possibilities, plans, or anything of the kind.
And I'm just trying to get at how long is it going to take to achieve that aim?
I'm not going to give a timetable to it, but I'm going to say that's a terrifically important issue.
Yeah, Dirk, you've been following it for a long time. You used to live there also. You wrote books about it. When we hear Netanyahu talk here about the war, what do you think is going to happen? What will he do? What will he do?
Well, it's in Netanyahu's interest to keep the war going for as long as possible, and at least until the Israeli elections later this year, because it gives him the posture of being this wartime prime minister who is fighting for the security of the Israelis. So it's also a PR question, actually. But in terms of actual strategy, Netanyahu has been active to frustrate everything Trump tried to achieve in terms of ceasefire or negotiations. Netanyahu is doing everything to keep on fighting. For example, when they first reached a ceasefire, Iran made understood that it included Lebanon as well. And Netanyahu, one day after that, he bombed Lebanon like for the worst event in decades. Yeah. So he made clear that according to him, there was no ceasefire, or Lebanon wasn't included in the ceasefire. So for Netanyahu, there's only one interest, and it's to keep going. Actually,
to keep going till the next elections.
But and that explains the unbounded conditions. Yeah, this is not realistic. This means that the intention is to go on and on with war. So currently we have no war and no peace. So the intention is to go ahead with attacking
under a ceasefire.
Yeah.
But did you see this coming? This and also this expansionist strategy of Israel. Taking Lebanon, taking Gaza, attacking Iran.
Well, of course, I'm not a psychic or anything, but at least what you saw, what you could see coming in the last few years is that Israel is becoming more bold in its strategy. So it started with Gaza. Like, of course, they reacted to October 7th, but then the reaction became much, much heavier than the actual deed that Hamas did. Then they exported this strategy to Syria, to Lebanon, and it was only waiting for the moment that they would also proactively attack Iran, because Netanyahu has been busy with Iran for decades, for disarming them, and now the time was right to attack them. Yeah.
And if we look at Turkey, because I think Turkey is has an interesting position, right, Matej? What is Ankara's strategy?
Well, so far, I think Turkey wanted to avoid being dragged into the conflict. It is not in their interest. They have their ties with Israel, they have their ties with Iran, and basically all the stakeholders that we described. What is worrisome from a Turkish perspective is that even now, even as the war is far from being concluded, Turkey is often mentioned in Israeli media and Israeli public discourse as the next big enemy. And
I
if
don't think they take that very serious in Turkey, right?
yeah, they take it very seriously.
do?
They
yeah,
do, of
yeah,
course.
of course.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
and
I
rightly
read-
so. I mean, at this point, I think it would be very hard to think that the current Israeli government would not be able to do similar tactics. Although, of course, Turkey is a different country from Iran. It's a NATO member, and so on and so forth. So it must be very complicated. But on the other hand, it's still, I think, discussed seriously. Turkey
But do you also think it could be attacked?
Well, at this point, I don't think that we could say that it is impossible. So many things has happened in the past couple of years which were seemed impossible.
We are unable to predict anything, and that's the situation of many analysts, all over the world with this Trump that you cannot predict, and this guy Netanyahu who is feeding him with all these lies and misguiding him. But the thing is, when it comes to Turkey, it's important to note that they played a mediator role. But then they give it away to Pakistan. And now their focus is Syria.
Okay, so why did they give the role? Why did they give away the role?
It's good because Pakistan is a good place. Everybody's listening to them. They have good, good relations with, of course, Iran and the Gulf countries and the U.S. Trump loves the president.
But why did Turkey give it away? What is their interest?
No, he chose to because everybody's affected. The effect is enormous when it comes to the economic.
Yeah.
Not only Gulf countries are suffering, but also Europe is suffering, and also Asia. A country like Pakistan is very keen to resolve this. They don't want this war to go on because the economic situation is really dire there.
I'm not really impressed by what Pakistan did.
Why?
Well, it's not about being impressed or not. They are being accepted by the U.S. and all the parties,
they are
including
accepted, but
Turkey, to play the mediator.
But they reach nothing, right?
Yes.
I mean,
because
the positions of the U.S. and Iran are way too much apart from each other.
Far apart from each other.
Yeah.
And if we talk about Lebanon, because Lebanon is still under attack also.
Yeah.
The demand is Israel's demand is to disarm Hezbollah. Is that actually possible? And what would happen if Hezbollah would be dismantled?
I don't see it happening within a year or so because, Israel has tried to demolish the whole weapon arsenal of Hezbollah, and now they are going in and they are acknowledging themselves that they cannot do it. So they blame the Lebanese government for not being able to disarm Hamas or Hezbollah, or not doing their best. But that now Israel is experiencing itself that it's not easy. So I don't know how you see this problem, but I don't see it happening.
What do you see happening in Lebanon? I know it's a hard question, but
just very quickly, I think it's what we can see is a humanitarian catastrophe. It's going to be increased, unfortunately, and there is no real strategic end sight for the Israeli offensive. There was this half observation about Israeli foreign policy that the country and the government is usually traditionally very good in tactics, but not very good in strategy.
Yeah.
So what we can see is that they can organize like the pager attack in Hezbollah. They can start bombing Iran and so on and so forth. And tactically, so on a very low level of practicality, it's a successful operation. But if you think about political outcomes, strategic goals, the Israeli government cannot really achieve these.
So what do they achieve?
They achieve tactical winnings, and also they manage. Benjamin Netanyahu as a prime minister, he manages to stay out of jail, basically.
Yeah. Minor security success.
It's also just to retaliate against Hezbollah. I mean, it's the same thing they have been doing in the West Bank, in Gaza, with the Iron Fist policy, which is basically collective punishment if Israel is being attacked. And you see that also literally now on the ground in Lebanon with the occupation of southern Lebanon by Israel at the moment, but also like all these villages in the south of Lebanon, they have been completely pounded. No building is left standing. So there you see that also like the population collectively is being punished for what's happening. And yeah, they did the same thing, the Israelis in Gaza, which is also trying to prevent, or at least showing to its enemies that there's a very high price of attacking Israel.
Yeah.
It's extremely important to highlight the narrative that both Israel and the U.S. always, sell whenever it comes to, a new Middle East waiting to be born. Okay, so remember, in Lebanon, when Israel invaded Lebanon in 1982, and they were talking about regime change at that time. What happened? The Shia were radicalized. And what was the outcome of that invasion? Hezbollah.
Yeah.
Let's go to 1991, Gulf War. The Sunni were radicalized. What was the outcome of that war? Qaeda, September 11. Then you have 2003, the occupation of Iraq. What was the outcome?
IS.
IS. So they never, these politicians, these leaders, the so-called leaders, whatever, the superpower, they never learn from history. So when you choose war over diplomacy, the outcome is really dark. And when you create like miserable conditions, a genocide in Gaza, ethnic cleansing in the West Bank, and now Lebanon, and now, and you name it, what will be the outcome of this?
Yeah, so what is the outcome?
Darkness.
More darkness.
Yeah.
At the same time, you see that Israel is occupying more and more territory, also like in Syria, and it can like point to the security threats that it has. So it also is kind of like a pretext to further occupy grounds.
Yeah.
So you think what would be the consequences in Syria then?
Consequences of Syria is that reconstruction will be very difficult, because I think Israel will act as a spoiler. I mean, they have been doing that already with the Druze community that are close to the Israeli border. Also, there have been some hints towards like Israeli support for the Kurdish communities in the northeastern part of Syria, and they want to have like leverage over it, and they also want to curtail the influence of Turkey in Syria, which is the main important player in Syria. So therefore, I think reconstruction in Syria will be very, very complicated.
And it's very, very much needed also.
And look at the effect on Gaza. Who's talking about the reconstruction of Gaza?
Yeah.
Nobody.
Yeah.
Is this hard for you? You're also an analyst. You're an analyst. This is serious, but you're also a human being from Gaza. Is it difficult?
I mean, it's what
talk like abstract, analytical, but also having friends and family there. I feel a bit obliged.
Why to bring this?
No, I feel a bit.
I like it that I'm talking about Iran and Israel.
I feel a bit
it's
bad.
No, it's a what hurts me. I studied in Cairo, Egypt, and I go to Cairo, Egypt a lot, and Jordan and whatever. So what I am sad about, it's like we are witnessing the outcome will be a broken Middle East. A broken Middle East, and that is something that really makes me sad.
Yeah.
Of course, it's extremely it's really painful. It doesn't have to be that you don't have to be a Palestinian to feel the people of Gaza waiting for the reconstruction and for rebuilding their lives.
Yeah.
I think it's, many people feel this way. So it's
another example of Israel sabotaging what Trump actually wants, right? Because Trump sees this future with hotels and golden statues and whatever, and Israel is just wanting to settle.
And the only positive thing I think in relation to this is that you have someone like Tucker Carlson. There is a division now within the Republican. That what are you doing? And there are voices within the Republican camp that it's like, what are you doing, Trump? And I think there is the midterm elections. And of course, Trump is eager to finish this kind of before the midterm elections. But Iran is not letting him take that because he wants to declare victory.
But if you look at what Trump is doing now, or the Trump administration, how would you describe that? With what was he saying at the beginning? There is a major live support, but he's now, of course, also at the summit with China. What does it look like?
Yeah, it's very haphazard. Like every 2 days, Trump changes his opinion, and of course, Iran.
Is he like trying to find a way out and selling it as, it's...
Well, but there really is no easy way out. So he's trying bombing, he's trying negotiating, but Iran is looking at their enemy and they're like, well, this guy doesn't know what he wants, so why
remember,
would we give him?
but
Why take
remember
him serious?
Nadia, remember he started with regime change in Iran. Now he's not saying that.
He's
He's saying fit into operation.
2 points. So first of all, he's doing like cannon boat diplomacy. So
What is that?
I mean, he's just like targeting them, saying like, we will pound you if you don't accept our demands. So, and you are weak, so you have to give in. But Iran is not responding to it as he was expecting. And they have also much more means to retaliate than he did expect.
Yeah.
So therefore he
underestimated Iran.
He underestimated Iran. But I think there's also like a broader global picture. It is not a coincidence that this year Maduro was kidnapped by the United States, that they have like further imposed their will on the Venezuela oil industry, that they are now attacking Iran. I mean, also initially the goal was regime change, so that will also give them leverage over, I mean, if there would have been regime change, they would be successful and a regime would be installed that was sympathetic towards the US. They would also have like further control over Iranian oil production. And that could help, first of all, to kind of like restrain China from that oil that also China needs for its further development. But at the same time, the US has betted quite big on oil and gas. So influence over that market is very important for the United States. And at least they have like some kind of win in that regard with the UAE stepping out of OPEC now.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk about this, but first a video. Because I have a video where we see how Iran boards a tank in the Strait of Hormuz.
Wow. First time to see it. Man.
That's
Wow.
intimidating in a way, right? Mate, the Strait of Hormuz closure, sorry, I'm not a native English, has been described as the largest oil supply disruption in history of the global energy market. We just saw this footage. It's like, I don't think there's any ships going through, or maybe one, but the whole market is disrupted. How do Gulf economies come back from this rupture?
Well, that's
I want to go back to the Gulf now.
$1 question, I think, for the Gulf states. So it's important to bear in mind that when we are talking about the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, it's not a physical closure. So we shouldn't, imagine Iranian ships just blocking the waterway. Yeah. They are basically saying that if anybody crosses, they are going. If anybody crosses without prior information to the Iranian authorities and so on and so forth, they might be attacked or they will be attacked. So
forget Game of Thrones. There's no big wall.
Yeah.
Okay. Nobody watched it. Okay, just me.
That's important, I think, because even if Trump, let's say, and this happened once, I think, or twice during this conflict, even if Trump declares that the strait is open, that doesn't mean that ships are going to go through, because this is, at the end of the day, it's the decision of the company and the decision of the person who guides that ship, which is supposed to go through. So according to most statistics, around 120 ships cross the Strait of Hormuz on a daily basis before the war. Half of that is energy-related companies or energy-related ships.
What does that mean?
So oil and gas, basically. But these are just rough estimates and some numbers differ, of course. What we can see is that a couple of ships cross the Strait of Hormuz. The other day there was a Qatari ship which crossed. What I saw today when I was coming here, there were the last 24 hours we can see 4 ships crossing the Strait of Hormuz.
From which country?
There was no statistics.
There was
about
one
that.
Russian oligarch with his super yacht
No,
that
that's,
actually managed to cross Hormuz.
That's important.
But think about it. The Hormuz is the only card in the hands of Iran to play against, Israel and the U.S. So if you were in the shoes of the Iranian, you would do the same. Huh? It's the only thing, and it worked.
Because what are the consequences? Like if we look at them,
Global economy extremely affected. Yeah.
Yeah, Matej?
Yeah, so basically the 20% of oil trade was off directly. Of course, some of that has been compensated for through different alternative routes, but that's still a small amount. Even if an 80 or 90% of that oil was going through Asian markets and not necessarily Europe, we still feel the consequences of that because the oil price has been going up because of the instability and so on and so forth. So basically what Iran did, I think, is that it inflicted pain on the world economy and increased the price of the American attack on Iran, basically. And this way, this is important to understand the logic because if we have a look at the traditional military capabilities, of course, the U.S.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
The traditional
military capabilities.
Military capabilities. Okay.
The U.S. and Israel are much stronger than Iran. So if it was a direct confrontation, Iran wouldn't be able to survive. What Iran can do is just change the tactic, change the scenery, change the theater of conflict. By inflicting this damage on the Gulf economies, on the global economy, and on the U.S. economy as well, and politics with Trump's popularity, I think that they managed to inflict enough damage that I'm not saying that they won the war, but they are very close on achieving their political goal in the war, which is survival, regime survival.
Yeah, and I will add, when it comes also, it's Hormuz, it's also a message to the Gulf countries. If I sink, I'm not going to sink alone. You're going to sink with me. And that's the message when it comes to...
Yeah. So how do the Gulf states respond, Gert-Jan, to this closing of the Strait of Hormuz?
Of course, they are referring to international law that's forbidden. They say, we are neutral within this war, so why are you doing this, Iran? They are trying to put also kind of a pressure on negotiations to kind of resolve the issue.
Yeah.
What is also interesting is that Iran actually threatened also to make the internet cables under the Strait of Hormuz an issue, which are actually really important for the visions that have been outlined in the United Arab Emirates, in Saudi Arabia, in which artificial intelligence, a data center play an important role, for which you need.
But this is still a threat, right?
This is still a threat, but this is also how they can hit the Gulf states, particularly in terms of their economic diversification plan to be less dependent on oil and gas.
Yeah.
And for that, they are betting on artificial intelligence. So that is now in jeopardy because also Iran has been targeting data centers as well in Gulf countries, also letting them know that they can hit that as well. At the same time, no company is now willing to invest in these Gulf states because of the threat of regional war. Also, tourism has been badly hit. Dubai is a major logistical port. That also is further jeopardized, and they are also looking at alternative trade routes. So that is an important element, and actually Turkey can also provide a way out for this.
In what way?
In way of there's now talk of pipelines going from Saudi Arabia towards Syria and then towards Turkey. Also trade route from that goes from Iraq towards Turkey, which there is investment in. So these are important elements when we think also about the position of Turkey within the region.
Yeah, and if you talk about ports, Israel has the ports in Eilat and Haifa.
Yeah,
that suddenly look very strategically valuable, right?
Yeah, I mean it's also interesting because that also is where this competition between Israel and Turkey comes from. So Israel is betting on the India-Middle East corridor, which runs basically from the United Arab Emirates to Saudi Arabia and would go to Haifa. And then they will further transport goods towards Europe. Well, Turkey feels left out, and they are betting like on a new kind of like trade route that goes through Saudi Arabia, but then up towards Lebanon, Syria, and then towards Turkey.
So who is economically benefiting from all these instabilities of this war, of the closing of the Strait of Hormuz?
The U.S. arms companies.
Okay.
Oh my God! Yesterday it was published at the New York Times.
The
Huge
US
deal.
arm company.
Yeah, a huge deal was done in which billions of dollars were paid to 2 American companies to sell interceptor missiles, which the countries like UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain are in desperate need for, and also because they want to focus now on deterrence and how to,
So
shoot
countries and companies
down
who produce
the Iranian drones.
Yeah.
Very important. Very last note. The Shaheed, the Iranian
Shaheed
drone,
drones.
it cost how much?
I have no idea.
How much does it cost? An Iranian
20,000 euros?
20,000?
Yeah.
Let us say, 20,000.
Yeah, maybe I'm
And then
speculating.
a single interceptor missile
Yeah.
by one of these American companies, a single one will cost 4 million.
Oh,
So they spent
Whoa.
4 million to shoot down an Iranian drone that cost 20,000. And imagine how many they needed to buy. Yesterday the deal was done. They passed Congress in order to make this deal. But imagine the money that was spent.
yeah.
Sad.
You wanted to respond also?
Yeah, just a quick note. That was also why Zelensky was visiting Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, because Ukraine has been much more effective.
They wanted a cheaper one,
in terms
cheaper
of,
ones.
Downing Shahed drones,
Yeah.
and they want to sell their technology.
Okay, but this is like the weapons industry.
Yeah.
Who else is economically benefiting, Matej?
Well, in the Gulf, we can see that the Omani economic numbers are much better than in the region. So they were they have net profits because they didn't rely on the Strait of Hormuz. They were able to export the same amount of oil, basically, on a higher price. So that's good for them. Although that doesn't mean that I would blame the Omanis. There is no Omani conspiracy behind this war. I have to.
It's just the
Yeah.
What
way
about,
they are.
no. What
Wait,
about
wait, wait.
Russia? Russia is also big.
Yeah.
Russia. Yeah.
And,
That's also true. Ukraine has been benefiting from this because they were able to gain a security partnerships in the region. So that's definitely there. And actually, the Saudi economy is withholding this much better than expected. And
the Aramco,
record profits
went
from
up, right?
Aramco.
Yeah.
And if we want to track the losers as well, we can see that the Bahraini, Kuwaiti, and Qatari economy is in a very bad shape. Bahrain already had to have a deal with the United Arab Emirates to basically save the economy and their ability to pay. But Qatar, since the Iranian attacks targeted the natural gas industry in Qatar, that was a huge blow. Now the IMF expects the Qatari GDP to shrink by 8%, whereas at the beginning of the year they expected it to increase like 5 or 6%. So that's definitely a big shift for them.
And the fact that the UAE stepped out of OPEC, how should we understand that?
We should also understand that it in the context of the war. They want to make up for the losses of the war. So they want to generate more income. Stepping out of OPEC allows them to increase their production. And that's also what the United Arab Emirates is going to do over the next years, and without being tied to the agreements that are set in OPEC in order to control the oil price.
There is the quota.
Yeah, the quota,
Yeah.
If I may add to this, the reason why the Emiratis are doing this now now, this has been in the air for many years because they were never happy with their quotas. By the way, they always overproduced, so they didn't really stuck with their official quotas. But the reason why they did this is that
A rule is not a rule.
Exactly. This decision doesn't have a short-term consequence because regardless of how much oil they pump up in the Emirates, they cannot sell it at this point. So this is going to have an effect in 2027 and the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years. Politically, this is a big message to Saudi Arabia, which is the dominant factor in OPEC.
Yeah.
That
They were very mad.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What is the message?
That you are not the boss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm also
Okay.
a regional player.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, these plans for increasing oil production were there already like for a couple of years within the United Arab Emirates. So
Yeah.
in that sense, it was always about to happen. And I think what is also really breaking OPEC apart is that the United Arab Emirates is willing to have like an oil price around like $65 a barrel. Well, in order to have enough revenue to make its budget, well, Saudi Arabia needs like an oil price of around 90. So that also
they
have
not
different
agreeing.
interest in terms of like the quotas that are being set.
Okay, I want to go to a different topic. And I need to include Dirk also with Dirk. You're being so polite. In June 2025, US strikes were said to have destroyed Iran's nuclear infrastructure, right? And yet, here we are negotiating to ensure Iran does not reconstitute the very program Washington claimed it had eliminated. Like, who knows what's really happening? What is the actual state, as far as you know, of the current US-Iran nuclear talks?
Well, the nuclear discussion is aspect of the talks they are having, but their positions are so far away from each other that there is no middle ground. I mean, it's obvious that Iran has enriched their uranium, and it's obvious that the US doesn't want that, but there's nothing the US can do to force the Iranians to hand over the uranium, for example. So it has been...
Well, Netanyahu has a completely different idea, right?
Yeah, well, we were talking about that actually when we were preparing this whole session. Like, how are Israel and the US physically going to enter Iran, and how are they taking the uranium out of Iran? Like by force.
Yeah.
And
he didn't want to answer the question.
No, he didn't. And I can understand that because that's, of course, it's a military secret. Yeah. But the four of us couldn't think of a way that they could do such a thing in a secure way without making it a major operation. It's inconceivable that they will succeed. But then again, as Mate has said, Israel has been successful in tactical operations. So who knows? Maybe they can pull it off. Yeah.
No, nobody dares to say it, right? And how real is a nuclear threat Iran poses?
What do you mean by a nuclear threat?
Well, that's the reason why this was all happening, right?
Well, of course, the Israeli narrative...
What is the threat?
Yeah, the Israeli narrative is that Iran is very close to developing a nuclear bomb. We know that this is not necessarily true. Of course, there have been indications in the past couple of years after the collapse of the Iranian nuclear deal in 2017 that Iran is enriching uranium to levels that it can be only used to military purposes, and they are developing all kinds of missiles and infrastructure which is needed for developing a nuclear weapon. That being said, this was not an imminent threat. I wouldn't, legally definitely not, but from a political perspective, I wouldn't say that this was an imminent threat. I think it was already mentioned that many times this nuclear issue with Iran, it's a really good narrative card which can be played because
is it just a narrative?
I mean, it's not just narrative, but I would say that its narrative value is bigger than its actual political value. Of course, if you ask people, if you ask governments, nobody wants Iran to be a nuclear power. Even I would say Russia would say the same. China would say the same. So this creates an illusion of consensus or an illusion of understanding. Whereas if you talk about other stuff related to Iran, that's a more complicated one, a more complex one. This is an easy card to play.
And if you,
but it's very important. I don't know if you also mention it in the media and remind the readers that Israel has a nuclear weapon, Israel. So both, you have U.S. and Israel, nuclear countries, bombing a non-nuclear country. And now what does non-nuclear states think nowadays? A country like Saudi Arabia. Mm-hmm. They're desperate to have it. That way, they will survive. Because non-nuclear states, they find it very shocking that this is happening. And there is no law, there is no order, there is no international law. Mm-hmm. It's the law of the jungle. And that's why it's important.
Yeah, because even last September, Saudi Arabia signed a mutual defense agreement with Pakistan, right?
Yeah.
That included officials who implied
and why did they
a nuclear
do that?
component.
Why did they do that? Because they see how the U.S. and Israel are acting. Therefore, I want to protect myself. I want to survive. And therefore, this is encouraging people to have seeking nuclear power.
But Matej, are we heading towards a nuclear proliferation across the Gulf?
Well, optimistically, no. I think that like one message, unfortunately, from this war is that if supporters of Iran could go back in time, they would tell Iran to develop the nuclear weapon sooner, because then this war couldn't have happened. This is just like one dimension of this. But on the other hand, the war also showed that the process of developing a nuclear weapon is a very dangerous process. Mm-hmm. I don't think necessarily that this war is going to incentivize the Gulf states to develop their own weapons. The Emiratis have nuclear power plants, they have nuclear technology, so I think that they would be closest to this. Saudi Arabia can buy basically a nuclear weapon from Pakistan if they want to, although I'm very skeptical about this.
Can you actually buy this? Is anybody, because it's also another dimension of power.
Well, there are all sorts of theories about this. If you sell it,
you lose your cars.
Yeah, I mean, they also there is this narrative as well that the Pakistani nuclear weapon is also partly Saudi because it was financed by the Saudis.
Okay.
I mean, at the same time, there are also U.S. nuclear bombs in Europe. So, I mean, in that sense, they could fall under the Pakistani nuclear umbrella with like same kind of like weapons.
Yeah, I'm not a technical expert of nuclear weapons, but I'm very skeptical of the Pakistani nuclear umbrella. They don't really have the capabilities, I think, to defend Saudi Arabia. Their whole infrastructure has been built on deterring India. Why would they give up their stockpile for Saudi Arabia if they are facing such a situation? Yeah. And we can also see that after that deal which you mentioned was signed, half a year later the Saudis actually wanted to have a new agreement with Pakistan because that was not enough. And when I'm talking with Saudi colleagues, they tell me that the effect of this agreement was much smaller than it was seen from outside of the region, because it was basically an upgrade and the modernization of the existing military ties between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. So I think that in order to talk about the Pakistani nuclear umbrella, we need technical changes, technical development, but also political and structural development as well of Pakistani-Saudi ties.
So concluding, right, what kind of regional order is emerging in the Middle East?
What kind of what?
What kind of regional order is emerging in the Middle East there?
There is an order in which Israel is a major player, which has to be contained in a way if you look through the eyes of the other countries in the region. There's this new alliance of Turkey, Egypt, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan. There is the UAE that aligns itself with Israel and the US. So we are still talking about different power blocks. So the blocks may be changing, but there's not one emerging power that dominates all the rest. And let's not forget that Iran itself, with its allies, well, they are badly hit maybe, but they are still alive. So they're not to be neglected as a power factor in the Middle East.
How would you add this description?
I mean, we have China now. It's not the U.S. It's really like a very crazy world order nowadays, giving the absence of the international law, the norms, everything. And now it's like now China is benefiting, and it's emerging. So who knows? But it's so early to draw the map now, because we need to wait for the end of this madness, and then we will see what happens. But currently it's not clear, but if to continue, we are having a broken Middle East.
And Europe? Where's Europe in all this? Because we're Europe, right?
Yeah.
Europe, I didn't hear Europe once.
Yeah, Europe is busy, coming out with a new NATO.
Yeah.
I think.
Mate and Dirk?
Punishing some settlers from Israel, but that's a very small thing that they are doing in the Middle East. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Mate?
Actually, before you asked about Europe, I wanted to say the same, that regardless of what order emerges, this is an order without Europe to some extent. Of course, we are there as an important economic partner. There are some member states like France or Italy which have security political partnership with many Gulf countries, for example. The European Union is supposed to be a very important development player in Lebanon, in Syria, and so on and so forth.
Supposed to be.
Supposed to be, yeah. But when there are these very harsh obstacles which we can see in terms of the sanctions, American sanctions still in place on Syria, which deprives of international companies or players to invest in development. When there is an ongoing war, the EU cannot really do much. And this is difficult to see, I think. Of course, now...
But we have relations with the US and with Israel.
Yeah.
So...
I mean, we have relations, of
also
course,
with
but
the UAE.
I think two things which we lack is a comprehensive strategy and the military capabilities to back that up.
Yeah.
And also Europe is very divided on many issues.
I think they aim to be independent from the US. That is the objective of the NATO now.
Okay, well, this is not a happy ending.
Reality bites.
Yeah, reality, but there's room for questions. How am I going to do? I think I'm going to walk around with the microphone. I think that's
It's nice to
is
move.
this
Huh?
on? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, can I see some hands? There was a question over here and here. I'll go there first. Yes, who do you have a question for?
Does the panel agree with me that if Trump doesn't remove the nuclear threat within months, I would like to specify, the Gulf states will come to an accommodation with Iran?
Who wants to reply? If Trump doesn't?
Remove the nuclear threat within months.
Which nuclear threat are you talking about?
Talking about the nuclear stockpile that Iran has.
I think...
If it doesn't happen within months, the Gulf states will come to an accommodation with Iran.
Who wants to reply?
I mean, the Gulf countries, like most of them, they want to have good relation with their neighbor because U.S. can leave them at any moment, but Iran is going to be there forever. And for their future generation, that's what I heard from the Qatari former foreign minister. He said, for the future generation, this is what we have to think, to have a good neighbor, to negotiate with our neighbor, to have alliance, even at some point. But
my question, I said, if they don't remove the nuclear threat, there will be an accommodation. Do you agree or not? I want you to predict the future. I'm doing it now. You take more risk as a panel member.
Okay.
I don't know if there is a threat, by the way.
Go ahead.
But
I mean, I largely agree. I largely agree with you, because I think that's what will happen. I mean, Iran is a big neighbor across the Persian Gulf. It can weaponize the Strait of Hormuz, so there also needs to be agreement with them. And also, before this war, you saw actually that rapprochement was being sought. And also, the U.S. won't come automatically to the back of the Gulf countries. The only element that might be a bit uncertain in this case is the United Arab Emirates. It might be that the United Arab Emirates further doubles down on its relationship with Israel, with the United States, and might be more hesitant to come to an agreement with Iran.
There was a question.
he wants to answer.
Yeah,
Just
go
add
ahead.
one thing. I mean, I completely agree with this, but I would add that Bahrain and Kuwait are also questionable at this moment because Bahrain didn't even normalize relations with Iran. They have a very complicated relationship.
Yeah.
And I would also add that there is some skepticism. I wouldn't say that this is the mainstream idea, but there is some skepticism that in the Gulf that Iran I mean, it seems sure that the Iranian regime can survive the war, but there is some skepticism that they can survive the next 2 or 3 years because the economic situation, the social situation is very bad in Iran, right? So for them, I think the peaceful times will be more devastating than the war itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. We already discussed shortly Israel's expansionism, so in Lebanon and in Syria, and I think 2 members of Netanyahu's cabinet, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, both voiced support or hinted at support for a greater Israel, including perhaps parts of Jordan and parts of the Sinai. Do you expect this to happen in the next 10 years? Will Israel try to continue this expansionism?
Who wants to answer that? Thank you. Who wants to answer that
that's
question?
their dream. That's what they are saying every day now, and it's not becoming a secret like in the past. But will they succeed? I mean, with Trump, I mean, anything can happen, as we said.
Yeah.
But I think do not underestimate Egypt. Do not underestimate Saudi Arabia at some point. I think this will be wishful thinking from Israel's point of view.
I mean, Jordan has been their dream for a century. Like the revisionist movement of Jabotinsky also always dreamt of occupying Jordan for the Jewish people. And of course, now they have a peace agreement with Jordan. So you would say, like, well, why would they invade a country that they have a peace agreement with? But I mean, it seems inconceivable, but at the same time, the things that they did the last couple of years, we also didn't think they would be able to pull it off.
Do you think elections could change something?
Well, I think Netanyahu's position is on the line. I mean, his popularity is, well, maybe won't be enough to continue with this specific government. So maybe, of course, if there's another prime minister, it will not be as expansionist as it is now. But
even Yair Lapid was talking about Greater Israel, right?
Well, that's the thing. The opposition is not much more liberal.
I agree with you, Dirk. But also, just to highlight his question, you should listen to the interview with the American ambassador in Israel, in which he was asked that this can happen. How are you going to stop Israel? And he said, why to stop? If they do it, they can do it, you know? That was the answer by a diplomat, a Zionist diplomat.
All right. Any other questions? Yes. Hold on, I'll come over.
Thanks. So there was this idea that 2026 was kind of the peak in terms of the ability of an Israeli president to get an American president to conduct a war against Iran. So do you agree with that? Do you see any possibilities after 2026 to repeat this type of war against Iran, or is it kind of gone, that possibility for Israel?
Who wants to answer this question?
It depends on what American administration we're gonna have after this. So, after 3 years, you have this Trump. So we are stuck for 3 years, and then after, I think this can happen anytime, and that explains why the Gulf countries will be keen to come out with hopefully an alliance to be unified. So it's really a struggle, but everybody's fearing that scenario you are asking.
Yeah, administration is an element, but also US public opinion is shifting. And I think that's an important shift, like even among Republicans.
Yes.
Israel is looked at less favorable than it has been before. So that might act as a restraint on US to continue its military financial aid to Israel, and also especially to get involved in regional wars in the region that are initiated by Israel, or that it also undertakes also on encouragement of Israel.
And just to add to that, the interview you showed of Bibi Netanyahu, in that interview he said, and that's why he fears this factor, and that's why he's keen to be independent.
Yeah, sure.
That he will not seek U.S. Financial support when it comes to military speaking.
Answer to your question? Yes, another one.
Something that puzzled me was when the first Saudi Emirati friction was there, I always thought that this wouldn't go on so long because they have so deep economic ties with each other that if this friction goes on too much, then it will make economic instability, which the Gulf doesn't really need at this point, where they're now nearing the end of the Vision 2030 goals with massive projects and water problems, problems with arm industries and stuff. So, yeah, I was quite surprised, honestly. I still don't really understand how this political economic game works.
Yeah. So, to be honest, I was also a bit surprised that because I thought this war would bring them close together, but actually the UAE has been really doubling down on its relationship with the US, with Israel. But I think there's also like an important economic element that drives competition between both, because they also, as Mate already referred to, they are both having like similar visions in terms of like investing in artificial intelligence, also investing in renewable energy, also trying to attract multinationals to their countries. So that creates economic competition between them. And then they have also a different philosophy. UAE has been quite willing to work with non-state actors in, for example, Yemen, but also where it is helping the Southern Transition Council, but also in Sudan with the Rapid Support Forces. While Saudi Arabia, in terms of like, has really like betted on existing governments and doesn't want to have like further regional instability caused by non-state actors. So I think that's also like a very important element that drives them further apart.
Matej?
Yeah, I would add that I was not, I mean, I completely understand your perspective. I was not super surprised that this is not going away, but mostly because there is, you know, so much path dependency in many decisions in the Gulf, right? So you make a decision and you stuck with it. For example, there were always talks about when there are new atrocities by Israel in the West Bank or Gaza, there are always talks about, yeah, is this the last straw in the Abraham Accords? It is not, because there was a strategic decision to go with this. And in order to change this, you need one person, Mohammed bin Zayed, to change his mind. And he won't. The same goes with Mohammed bin Salman, although he changed his policies many times in the last 10 years. But I think that given the state of Emirati diplomacy, foreign policy strategy, economic strategy, as it was explained, I don't see the room for compromise at this point. So I would be surprised if this would go away in the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Yeah. Yes. There's one over here as well? Oh, yeah.
Hello. I always had this wondering that how come is Israel having a lot of nuclear arms and that they want to forbid Iran to have some of one? Why is the US working in that matter? That's my question.
Gert-Jan?
Yeah, for US, they want Israel to be the military superior power, and that's because it's the only state in the region with nuclear arms. Also, in terms of like arms sales, it has always been like an impediment for the Gulf states. They couldn't get the latest technology because only Israel was allowed to have like the latest military technology. So also having this current situation in which Israel is the only nation with nuclear weapons in the region is in line with that philosophy.
Did you say philosophy? But what was the last
two
words you said?
Just to have Israel as the military superior state within the region.
Oh, it's the US decide.
Yeah, I mean that's the preferable situation, I would say, for the United States.
Why actually?
I mean, initially it was during the Cold War because Israel was a reliable ally. That's also being like held intact with specific lobby organizations that there are in the United States. that are lobbying in support of Israel, and maybe also the idea that a nation that feels to many Americans like more closer to them should be like naturally be more aligned with them as a reliable ally within the region.
Sorry, microphone. Yes. You want to add something, or you? Yeah.
I would be happy to add something. So, according to conventional strategic logic, nuclear weapons are defensive weapons. So they establish deterrence. So you are basically safe from being attacked. I'm not sure either.
Something option?
No, but
We don't talk about it, but it's present.
Let him continue.
I'm just saying that this is the conventional logic. So that is what, like people learn in security studies at universities, including the Israeli elite, the American elite, and so on and so forth. So if you have this logic, and we accept this for a second with all the caveats, with which I agree, you don't want your enemies to have nuclear weapons, especially if you want to have regime change in Iran, right? So that's the political logic.
I want to make, though, a geographical point here, because Iran, of its size, is very different than Israel, a small state country, which would be very easily nuclear destroyed than in Iran, which is like much faster in terms of like its territory. So that creates also like a security element within Israel, which also made it like really vulnerable, of course, to the missile attacks and drone attacks by Iran.
Okay.
It's so unfair. It's so unjust that Israel to have this power. Yes, and nowadays, other states they find the justification that if Israel has, I should have too. So nobody should have it.
Okay.
I think
I want to do a few more questions. Can I see the hands?
Free word of a nuclear power.
There's one question over here. There's one question. Two questions. Any? Okay, 3 questions. Yes. Or did I miss some? No? Okay. Yes.
Yeah, what's your best guess about the time that the Iran regime can hang on? Because I read in the Wall Street Journal that after a while it has to shut off its wells, and that might be a dangerous process that might endanger the wells completely shut them down at all, and then the money will run out. And what's going to happen in Iran?
Who wants to answer this question? So how long can Iran continue?
According to CIA, they said 6 months, but that's the American thinking. But I think, Iran can go on and on.
My completely unscientific guess is that Iran can survive the war, and I think the next 2 years after the conclusion of the war is where I would put like a milestone. If they can survive the first 2 years after the war, I would be somewhat surprised. But I'm saying this now without any proper methodology.
Okay. There were 2 questions over there. Yes. And then I think time's up. Yes.
Well, my question was more or less the same. Of course, Iran can play a cat and mouse game with the Strait of Hormuz. On the other hand, the Americans can completely stop the Iranian export of oil. The Iranian inflation rate is already at 50-60%. It will probably be a matter of time since they will be deprived of food and things like that. So, just like the former question. Isn't it also for the Revolutionary Guard, which is more or less running the government at this stage? If they want to continue, it's also in their interest, perhaps at short term, to find a solution somehow. So the pressure is on the Gulf states, but and of course on all the ones who have economic damage, but for the Iranians as well, or for the new government in place, time is also seems to be ticking.
Yeah, I mean, this is why things are quite complicated for Iran as well. I completely agree with you that although there are some political reasons why Iran should drag the war out until the midterms, but also this economic pressure is completely there. But I would make the distinction that if the Iranian economy is doing badly, which it does, that doesn't necessarily undermine the IRGC and the regime, because they have enough money to survive for many months. That is why I think that after the war, war, it would be more dangerous for them.
Gert-Jan?
Yeah, it basically depends on how long they can keep the current security apparatus intact and repress the population. And yeah, that's hard for me to predict at this point. But I mean, if that collapses, then yeah, that would be the end of the regime in Iran.
Yes.
Yeah, with respect to the fact that the US will not allow Iran to have a nuclear bomb, isn't one element that's not mentioned that Iran has as official state policy to wipe out Israel?
Well, that's rhetoric.
Who wants to? Dirk? Taghreed?
Yeah, well,
So Israel wants to wipe out the whole, and Iran wants to wipe. Everybody wants to wipe each other,
don't think
know.
that
No, but it's
Israel
true. It's a
I'm
mutual
not very
feeling
much in
between.
favor of Israel,
Can I
but-
answer your question?
Well,
Do you want me to answer? If you don't accept my viewpoint, it's fine.
Wait. Let's
It's
listen
fine.
to each other. Let's listen to each other. Let's listen. Let's repeat the question, please.
I don't believe that Israel. I'm not very much in favor of Israel, but I don't believe that Israel has as official policy to wipe out Iran. Iran has as official policy to wipe out Israel. That's true. So that might be a difference.
I mean, it's their official rhetoric. It would also mean that Israel will retaliate with nuclear bombs, so that will also heavily affect Iran. So therefore, I'm not sure if this nuclear retaliation of Israel will not be sufficient to hold Iran off of targeting Israel with a nuclear bomb. But obviously, it can be framed in this sense because of the rhetoric also of Iran as an existential threat for Israel. But to what extent that is an existential threat, I think can be put in doubt because of the nuclear deterrent that Israel has.
Okay, I just want you to think out of the box here. What did Trump say he will do? What did he say he will do to Iran? He will...
Sorry, I'm mentioning Israel, not Trump.
No, but let's think about what did Trump say? He wants to end the civilization.
Yes,
This is genocidal language by the superpower leader. Not only that, what did he say? He will bring them back to the Stone Age.
Yeah.
What does it mean?
But don't we agree
And then you have Iran saying, "I want, death to Israel, death to America." They say that, of course. And also Israel, hello, come on, what Israel do? They want entire and a greater Israel. What does it mean, greater Israel? So
Again,
we
we
have
are
to be
not
fair.
discussing if I'm
We have to listen to everyone. They're all the same. They're all the same. They want their own survival here, So that's...
Why for you is this an important point? What do you want to stress with...
Again, I'm not in favor of Israel, but I do believe that there is an existential fear. How true it is, you are right.
Everybody has it.
Please, I think we all agree that Trump's point of view change every day. So he cannot be, he can't be taken seriously. But Iran has had this policy for decades already.
Dirk, maybe, thank you. What was the relationship back in the days between Iran and Israel? It wasn't always like this, right?
No, before 79, before the Islamic Revolution, they were good friends. And there is this movement of the son of the Shah, Reza Pahlavi, which aims for renewing the good ties between the two countries. And of course, they are supported by, the ultra-right wing in Europe and the US. So it's not carved in stone that the two countries are enemies. So, I mean, not sure what's happening, but it...
Nadia, there are many meetings off the record between Iranians and Israelis. So when they meet, they talk and they negotiate. And, like what happened during the nuclear negotiation, they sit together, they drink and eat together. So it's just rhetoric, that each sides will do. So it's politics. It's dirty politics, basically.
Are we going to end with dirty politics? Is that the conclusion? Is that the conclusion? Yeah. Okay, please. No dirty politics.
At least I made you laugh. I mean.
Oh yeah, thank you. Oh yeah, oh thank you very much. So I'm curious about your view on the. So basically, you mentioned 2 elections coming up, right? One in U.S., one in Israel. But as we see, what benefits Trump and Netanyahu at the moment is very much in opposite directions when you look at the instability in Middle East and how that affects oil prices and everything, which creates, I think, a natural friction. How do you see that, going towards these elections? Sorry, and after that.
Well, I think it's very true what you're saying, that Trump has one interest to end the war and Netanyahu has one interest to keep going. If you look at the Israeli population, maybe 80-90% of the population supports the war and they agree with the viewpoint that Iran should be annihilated, and also the opposition in Israel agrees with this viewpoint. So what you will be seeing, I guess, the next couple of months is Trump trying to wiggle himself out of the situation and Netanyahu frustrating Trump doing that. So
That's how you should read that 60-minute interview also.
I guess, yeah.
Well, this is the end then. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I think it's time. Thank you for all the guests, for the speakers, and for being here. And I think we should have drinks together.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Nadia.
Oh, and Stena, the editor of this Stena Stand Up.
Nadia and Sana, thank you.
Did the program.